Welcome to the Gaze into Cinema YouTube channel. The Indonesian public upset, 1945 to 1949. The Indonesian public upset was an equipped clash and conciliatory battle between the Republic of Indonesia and the Dutch realm somewhere in the range of 1945 and 1949. The transformation started 2 days after the Japanese acquiescence in the Pacific, when Sukarno and Hatta declared Indonesia's autonomy on August 17, 1945. The Dutch would not perceive Indonesian freedom and endeavored to recolonize the country. A 4-year war followed, with the Indonesians ultimately arising triumphant. Background: the Indonesian public insurgency was the summit of many years of patriot feeling and protection from Dutch provincial rule. The Dutch had administered Indonesia for north of 300 years, and their provincial strategies were frequently shady and oppressive. In the mid-20th 100 years, various Indonesian patriot associations arose, calling for freedom. These associations were enlivened by the beliefs of the French Transformation and the American upset, as well as by the outcome of the Indian autonomy development. The Japanese occupation, the Japanese control of Indonesia during the Second Great War assumed a critical part in the flare-up of the transformation. The Japanese at first guaranteed Indonesians freedom, yet they immediately broke their commitment and forced a cruel and harsh occupation system. The Japanese likewise assembled large number of Indonesians for constrained work and military help. The Declaration of Autonomy, on August 17, 1945, 2 days after the Japanese acquiescence in the Pacific, Sukarno and Hatta declared Indonesia's autonomy. The declaration depended on the Pancasila, a 5 standards philosophy that included patriotism, a vote-based system, civil rights, Islam, and solidarity in variety. The Dutch reaction: the Dutch wouldn't perceive Indonesian autonomy and endeavored to recolonize the country. In September 1945, English soldiers arrived in Indonesia to incapacitate Japanese powers and keep everything under control. The English additionally delivered Dutch detainees of war, who promptly started to reassert Dutch command over the country. The equipped battle: in November 1945, the Indonesian military, known as the Tentara Keamanan Rakyat, TKR, connected with the Dutch in a progression of fights. The Dutch were at first ready to catch the significant urban areas and ports, yet they couldn't handle the open country. The Indonesians pursued a guerrilla war, and the contention delayed for quite some time. Global intercession: the global local area assumed a critical part in the Indonesian public upheaval. The US and the Soviet Association were both anxious to keep the Dutch from recolonizing Indonesia, as they expected that this would prompt the spread of socialism in Southeast Asia. The US and the Soviet Association additionally upheld the Indonesian freedom development for compassionate reasons. The strategic interaction: notwithstanding the equipped battle, the Indonesians likewise sought after a conciliatory answer for the contention. In 1946, the Indonesians and the Dutch consented to the Linggadjati arrangement, which perceived Indonesian sway over Java and Sumatra. However, the arrangement was rarely completely carried out, and the contention continued in 1947. In 1948, the Indonesians and the Dutch consented to the Renville arrangement, which conceded the Dutch command over various regions in Sumatra. In any case, the Indonesians rejected the understanding, and the contention continued in 1948. The Dutch military hostile: in December 1948, the Dutch sent off a tactical hostile against the Indonesians. The Dutch immediately caught the significant urban areas and ports, and they appeared to be ready to overcome the Indonesian freedom development. However, the global local area censured the Dutch military hostile, and the Unified Countries Security Board requested the Dutch to pull out their powers. The Round Table Meeting: in July 1949, the Indonesians and the Dutch met at the Round Table gathering in The Hague. At the meeting, the Dutch consented to perceive Indonesian freedom. On December 27, 1949, the Dutch officially moved power to the Republic of Indonesia. The Indonesian public insurgency significantly affected Indonesia. The Indonesian public unrest significantly affected Indonesia. It prompted the defeat of the frontier request and the foundation of another Indonesian country-state. The upheaval likewise fundamentally affected Indonesian culture, and governmental issues. Social effect: the Indonesian public upheaval had various social effects. To begin with, it prompted the ascent of another Indonesian world class. This world class was comprised of previous patriots, military pioneers, and learned people. The new first class assumed a main part in the improvement of post-pioneer Indonesia. Second, the Indonesian public unrest prompted the improvement of another Indonesian public personality. This character depended on the Pancasila, the five standards philosophy that Sukarno had announced in 1945. The Pancasila put an accentuation on patriotism, a majority rules government, civil rights, Islam, and solidarity in variety. Third, the Indonesian public transformation prompted the strengthening of ladies. During the transformation, ladies assumed a fundamental part in the Indonesian battle for freedom. They filled in as attendants, warriors, and spies. They likewise coordinated shows and blacklists. After the unrest, ladies kept on assuming a significant part in Indonesian culture. Political effect. The Indonesian public unrest likewise had a significant political effect. The insurgency prompted the foundation of the Republic of Indonesia, another country-state in light of the standards of a vote-based system and civil rights. Nonetheless, the new Indonesian government was confronted with various difficulties. In the first place, the nation was monetarily immature. The Dutch had zeroed in on fostering the product area, however they had ignored the homegrown economy. Second, Indonesia was politically partitioned. There were various different ideological groups, and building an agreement on significant issues was troublesome. Third, Indonesia confronted various outside dangers, like the danger of Dutch recolonization and the danger of socialist disruption. Notwithstanding these difficulties, the Indonesian government had the option to unite its power and lay out a stable political framework. The public authority likewise sent off various monetary and social advancement programs. These projects assisted with working on the existences of millions of Indonesians. The Indonesian public unrest was a long and ridiculous struggle, however it eventually brought about the freedom of Indonesia. The unrest was a demonstration of the assurance and versatility of the Indonesian public. It was likewise a triumph for the standards of self-assurance and public sway. The Indonesian public transformation was a mind-boggling and multi-layered occasion. It was both a furnished clash and a discretionary battle. It was likewise a social upset, as it prompted the defeat of the pioneer request and the foundation of another Indonesian country-state. The Indonesian public upset was likewise a microcosm of the virus war. The US and the Soviet Association were both anxious to help the Indonesian freedom development, as they expected that the Dutch would recolonize Indonesia and transform it into a socialist satellite state.